and welcome to Caribbean Connections, Caribbean Airlines Thought Leadership Series, where we sit and chat with regional leaders to get their stories on how they have achieved success and for them to share their perspective on issues impacting the region. I am Dion Legore, the head of corporate communications, and I am delighted to be here on location in awesome Guyana. Guyana is vast. It stretches 600 miles from north to south. It is known as the land of many waters, but also of many landscapes, from coast to mountains, rivers to savannas, and so much more. In recent years, with the massive oil discoveries, Guyana is poised to become one of the wealthiest nations in the world, with many businesses clamoring to enter to catch the wave of wealth. But successful business is not new to Guyana, and the country has produced some of the region's leading entrepreneurs. In this episode, it is our pleasure to chat with one of them, none other than Mr. Robert Badal. Mr. Badal has defied the odds, and today, his flagship company, Guyana Stockfeeds, is the leading producer of animal feeds with 70% of the local Guyanese market. His high-quality parboiled rice, which is marketed under the Angel brand, dominates supermarkets in the region. He owns the prestigious and iconic Pegasus Hotel, located on the tip of Georgetown's Atlantic coast. Mr. Badal, welcome to Caribbean Connections.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here with us today in Guyana, no less, here at your new complex, the Pegasus Suites and Corporate Center. It is indeed a beautiful setting. Our view from the window is magnificent, all testimony to the work that you and your team have done over the years. And as we speak of that, you have been an entrepreneur for more than 2 decades. Your brands are well known throughout the entire region. Can you tell us about your journey thus far, and what are some of the key leadership actions that would have contributed to your success?
Well, Dion, thank you for being here all the way from Trinidad. I'm a favorite of Caribbean Airlines. I'm a frequent flyer, Platinum.
Indeed.
I have so many points I can't recall. They keep on accumulating all the time. But I've started business just over 25 years ago. Then I was more comfortable. I never thought of getting into business, even though I was a qualified chartered accountant. So after a few years of executive positions, I started business. Then I never wanted to get into business, but I was always comfortable with a professional life, having a good salary, a decent home, a happy family. That was my motivation, really. But as time goes on, I realized my impatience and my drive for change got the better of me. I started business in around 1996. After a short period of trading rice between Guyana and Jamaica, I tendered and bought Guyana Stockfeeds, a state-owned company under the government privatization program. That facility was the largest and is still the largest livestock producer in Guyana. And my task then was to develop that business, which was undergoing significant competition from imports. So my first task was to expand the capacity and make the business internationally competitive. That was followed in 2000, that was 1998 when I took over. That was followed by my entry into the fast food business. I launched Popeye's Chicken and Seafood in 2001, and I sold it 10 years after. In 2007, I completed the construction of a state-of-the-art parboil rice facility. A facility that on to today has the highest selling, most recognizable brand of rice, Angel, throughout the Caribbean. From Trinidad and Tobago through Barbados, St. Lucia, up to Jamaica. Our service to the Caribbean market as far as rice supplies and food security is concerned is notable. In 2008, I bought the Pegasus Hotel. Quite a distinct, different industry.
Indeed it is.
Of which I had no clue about, but I was a frequent customer at the Pegasus bar. The property was up for sale and there were no takers after 3 years. So I got into that business, and that was followed by a $10 million US refurbishment of the hotel. As you see it there today, was not the way it was when I took over. Even the exterior are all cladded. All the windows have been expanded. The curtain wall around the property, around the building. Quite an iconic property. So my intention then was to make it as attractive as possible, put my own handprint on the property, such a property that was frequent all over the years by dignitaries, diplomats, Queen Elizabeth herself. We still have a room and a suite after Queen Elizabeth. All the prime ministers of the region. Former President Carter, a frequent guest there. We name a suite after him. And our own Sir Sridhar Rampal, 3 times CARICOM Commonwealth Secretary General, has a suite named after him. So Pegasus is about history. And to expand on that, when I took over, there was this unoccupied piece of land here, which was used as a dump site. Occupied by an elderly man who cut the grass and sell it to cattle farmers to sustain himself. And there I thought, you know what, this is the opportunity for me to engrave my own handprint on this property, not only buying the Pegasus Hotel, but to expand it in a way that will reflect my choices and the way I want, and the comfort and accommodation that I want guests coming from overseas to enjoy. So there is the story about my journey. It traversed many sectors, and I believe, the contribution I've made and all the companies I've made to the economy are significant.
Indeed, they are, Mr. Badal. And I want to thank you for not being settled in the corporate world and with a comfortable life and so on, because that drive is what would have contributed and continues to contribute so significantly to many aspects of high quality brands in the region. The Pegasus is iconic. You're in, this part of Georgetown. When you hit the Pegasus, it still has tremendous presence. That round shape is unique on the landscape here, and of course the backdrop of the Atlantic coast. So you mentioned being a chartered accountant, but you left out an important part of that story, the time frame with which you completed the full qualification of the ACCA, which is absolutely no small feat. Could you just give us a peek into that? Because I find it motivating for persons who at points in time may be struggling with study, young persons who may not be focused. We want them to get a sense of the drive and be motivated by your success. Tell us about that.
Well, it's an interesting story. I started as an agriculturist. I worked in the sugar fields immediately after high school. I chose the sugar fields because it was paying better. I had 3 months as a teacher, but didn't like it because the salary was so poor. So I went into the dusty sugarcane fields where my aunt worked. She was the only breadwinner of 8 kids, including myself and my sister. I got a cadetship and I studied agriculture. And after serving my contract, I say, hey, the dusty fields are not for me anymore. So I started accounting exams. In those days, there were no school doing accounting ACCA. So I had to buy books and study from home. I was fortunate in the sense that after 2 years, I have a habit of doing many things together, because I'm bored when I'm not fully occupied. And whereas friends of mine who have been doing the exams for, let's say, 5 years and more, and couldn't get through level 1 and level 2, I hit level 1 in 1 sitting, 5 subjects. I hit level 2 in 2 sittings, and I hit the final the next. I completed ACCA in 2 years, a record unto this day.
It would be a record. The ACCA exam is one of the more challenging exams to date.
Well, perhaps it was luck or just hard work.
Hard work, I'm sure.
I had a full-time job then, so it was very challenging to go through that exam. And indeed, it's the most difficult, one of the most difficult exams, globally, yes.
You're very humble, and I appreciate that in an individual in spite of your accomplishments, but that record stands to date, and anyone with exposure into that ACCA exam, it is globally one of the most difficult exams. It speaks to perseverance. It speaks to having a focused mindset, that entire power of focus and a level of determination, which of course we've seen the fruit of the labor. So you're here having a bird's eye view of the hustle and bustle that has come with the massive discoveries of oil here in Guyana, which is on the cusp of a significant economic boom. What, in your view, are some of the opportunities and the challenges that you see for Guyana, the country, and for entrepreneurs?
Of course, Guyana is on the cusp of significant economic transformation, all because of the oil rush here, the discoveries of significant amounts of sweet oil. A few years before now, we could have never expect, the extent of the activity that we're seeing now. Even after the discovery of oil, even myself couldn't predict the level of heightened activity that we're seeing here. And it presents a lot of opportunities for Guyana, Guyanese, and the region. The government's focus is, the focus of the government is really to ensure that regional people benefit and regional companies, not only Guyanese. Even though we have the local content legislation, we have a lot of regional workers and entrepreneurs in Guyana. So we have seen a rapid influx of oil services, particularly from Trinidad, mainly because of the experience and the expertise of Trinidadians over the past 100 years in developing the oil sector in Trinidad. So we see significant activity from transportation to pest control to fabrication, all sorts of engineering activity that supports oil.
Quite a bit.
But outside of that, we also have the spin-off effects in the area of housing and accommodation, and I think that's a significant economic focus now to expand housing and accommodation. Housing for expats, accommodation for more traffic into the country. There are also opportunities in my own business in food, because we expect, let's say, 250,000 people come in, to support the oil sector. And that will require a 50% production in food to support that. In other areas of construction, we have already seen significant activity in the construction sector, led by the government, of course.
It's not yet an elephant in the room, but with development also comes that risk of cultural, the diluting of the culture, and also the environment in Guyana, the diversity of the environment and the potential impact, let's say, of degradation. How can we protect against that, before we see any fallout?
Well, Guyana has, on the origin of Guyana itself, during colonial times, that we had a lot of British people here. We also have 6 races in Guyana. Afro, Indo, Chinese, Amerindian, First Peoples, mix, Portuguese. We have a diverse, and with that mix brought a diverse culture. Even just like in Trinidad, where you have so many different people, the Latin influence and so, yes, that bring a very rich culture that can be seen in our music, in your music, in our cuisine, our food itself, in our cultural activities, dances, and the drums and the tassa and our festivals, carnival, and these kind of things. So it's a very rich combination. That's one area where I think purity does not enhance, but the mix of different cultures really enhance national life itself. And we all learn from each other. Like, there are a lot of Venezuelans here, just like they are in Trinidad, and they provide significant amount of labor. On this project, I had Asians, I had Venezuelans, some Colombians, Chinese, and our own Guyanese. So they all work towards a common goal, but they all relate well with each other because of that unifying effect that working towards a common goal brings. So I feel it's a positive for us. I personally, and I don't think many people have any fear about cultural dilution. Guyanese, at the core of the Guyanese culture and spirit is the level of hospitality to others.
This has been a truly enjoyable experience thus far. And of course, the world is still, emerging from a pandemic that has had devastating impacts depending on where you're sitting. Can you share some insight into how entrepreneurs and the business community, particularly in the region, can navigate as we recover as a region?
The COVID pandemic has been the most difficult part of my life, and I think the same experience you would have faced, and we all faced, especially in the region. It has disrupted both supply and demand and affected economies globally. All economies, companies have been affected. Regional economies have been more severely affected, mainly because they're less insulated and they're less resilient in the face of external shocks, be it economic shocks, environmental, disaster, political, and otherwise. On account of being small economies, with small population, very limited foreign reserves, low productivity, narrow economic base, and that caused regional economies to be heavily devastated. The tourism and travel industry was the most heavily affected of all the sectors of an economy, be it in Guyana, in Trinidad, in Jamaica, in the Fourth Wall, in Paris, in Milan, in New York. The travel and hospitality industry, tourism, has been most affected. There was shutdown of everything, all hotels closed. And as the resurgence emerges now, I think we can illustrate how businesses react and how they try to get back to normal by indicating how Pegasus deal with that situation. I could recall the pain we went through when we only had 2 rooms occupied at this hotel, when our borders were closed, and that went on for months. We took a decision not to close the hotel. We maintained all staff, we cut our energy bills, we did better energy management. We looked for areas where we can expand some services to secure more income. We renegotiate our contracts with services so that our costs come down to a level. And in that way, we navigate the pandemic securely, thanks for the fact that we had some reserves which we used to pay staff and keep them going towards the end of by the time the borders were reopened, all our reserves were exhausted. We took that time to continue this expansion, to build this facility. So quietly we were building under COVID restrictions. So it was a very, very difficult time. Being in business, I mean, you have to cater for the sunshine and the rain. There are bound to be difficult times. There are bound to be difficult days. And you hope that tomorrow will always bring a better situation. So we reacted well, and I think in every other business, entrepreneur has had to make some decisions. In the food sector, that wasn't affected that much. I think we sold more feed and more rice during that period because people were stocking up on rice and these kind of things. Our distributors in the region were demanded more supply, so that wasn't affected. But the tourism and hospitality was significantly affected. Unfortunately for us, by the time the pandemic ends, we were already near completion of this facility.
Thankfully, because of good planning, careful management, cost management, you were able to protect the resources when there were difficult times, and of course, quietly continue to pursue to execute the dream of this, the hotel suites and the corporate center. So many lessons. It speaks to our resilience as people, as human beings. And in the region, I pride our regional experience as one born of persons who, under different circumstances, would have been brought to a region, displaced in many ways, and had to make the most of what is here. So ours is a wonderful story, as is the story of the Pegasus, which I can't wait for when someone writes a book, or if you write a book of your own journey. It will make for wonderful reading, insightful reading with many lessons. So I am Dion Legore, the head of corporate communications. I am humbled, privileged to have had a wonderful conversation with Mr. Robert Badal, entrepreneur, motivator, thinker, visionary, here on location in Georgetown, Guyana. Until next time, take care.